There was sand in the bathtub. Fine, beige sand, the kind you'd find near a lake, not a beach. It was smeared along the curve of the tub like someone had stepped in and forgotten to rinse it all the way. The thing is, we live in Iowa. There are no lakes near us. And she hadn't left town. At least, not according to her. That's when the humming started. She was in the kitchen, back from book club, whatever that meant now. I could hear her through the wall. Humming. Off-key. Carefree. I walked into the bathroom and just stared at that sand for a long time. She didn't even own sandals. Let me rewind. Last night, I fell asleep to the sound of her giggling over FaceTime with her maid of honor, Triss. They were planning the last little details before the big day, in her words. I heard the words floral budget and vow cards before I dozed off on the couch. When I woke up at 3:26 a.m., she wasn't home. I checked her location. No signal. No texts. No missed calls. Then, at 4:09 a.m., the door unlocked. Quietly, she slid in, tiptoed to the kitchen, and poured herself water like she hadn't just ghosted her fiancé for 6 hours. This morning, I said nothing. I made toast. She kissed my cheek. I didn't kiss back. Then she said, "Do we have any calamine lotion?" Random. Weird. Specific. I asked why. She said, "I think I got a rash or something." That's when I noticed it, little red marks on the side of her neck, mostly covered by her hair. Could have been mosquito bites. Could have been anything. But I knew. I knew the same way you know a storm's coming before you see a single cloud. After she left for errands, I did something I haven't done since I was a kid. I snooped. Not through her phone, no. Through the trash. There, between the eggshells and a Starbucks cup, was a crumpled printed receipt from a gas station 2 hours away. Timestamped, 11:48 p.m. She was there. While I was home, falling asleep to wedding Pinterest boards and old voicemails from her grandma, she was 2 hours away, in a lake town we've never visited. But I wasn't angry. I was cold. You know the kind of cold where your stomach tightens, your arms go limp, and your brain just slows down? That. I didn't text her. I didn't ask. I didn't even look at her Instagram, even though I know she always posts when she lies. Instead, I cleaned the bathtub. I scooped up the sand, put it in a Ziploc, and stuck it in the freezer. I don't know why. Maybe I wanted to keep it. Maybe I needed proof. Or maybe, deep down, I knew this was the first chapter of the unraveling, and I didn't want to miss a single breadcrumb. By the time Darla got back from her errands, I had already listened to the voicemail 5 times. It hadn't come to my phone. It was on the landline, an old wall-mounted receiver we kept in the hallway, mostly as a joke. You know, one of those relics people keep around for aesthetics. I didn't even realize it still had voicemail enabled. But apparently it does. And sometime around 2:12 a.m. last night, someone left one. A man. His voice was low, a little slurred, maybe tipsy but not drunk. He said, "Hey, just checking if you made it back okay. Last night was, yeah, you left in a rush. Forgot your bracelet. Anyway, hope he doesn't notice the bruise. Be safe." Then he hung up. No name. No number attached. Just that. I played it again, this time with my ear almost pressed to the speaker, hoping I'd misheard it. Maybe it said breakfast or breeze. But no, it said Bruce. And it said he. As in, me. When she walked through the door with 2 paper bags full of groceries and a bottle of oat milk I didn't ask for, she looked like the same old Darla. But something in me had changed. I looked at her face, at the slight mark behind her collarbone, one she hadn't covered quite as well as she thought, and I felt like I was watching someone play dress-up in my fiancé's skin. I wanted to scream. I wanted to cry. But mostly, I wanted answers. So I asked one question. "Did you sleep okay last night?" She blinked. A little too long. Then smiled like a pageant contestant. "Yeah, totally." Knocked out the second I hit the pillow. I stared at her. Not angry. Just hollow. "Did you hear the landline ring?" I added, casual as I could. She hesitated. Just for a second. "That thing still works?" She laughed, already turning toward the kitchen. I nodded slowly, then walked back toward the hall and pressed play on the voicemail again. Not loud, not dramatic, just enough for her to hear. Her hand stopped moving. The paper bag she was unloading stayed open, frozen. She didn't turn around. She didn't speak. She just stood there. After a moment, she said something I'll never forget. "Did you go through my stuff?" That's what she said. Not, "That's not what it sounds like." Not, "Who is that?" Not even, "I can explain." No. She asked if I'd gone through her stuff, as if that was the betrayal here. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. I walked over to the fridge, opened the freezer, and took out the Ziploc with the sand inside. I placed it gently on the counter, right next to the bottle of oat milk, and looked her dead in the eye. You want to tell me where this came from? She didn't flinch. She didn't cry. She didn't lie. She just whispered, I didn't think you'd notice. I could feel my pulse in my ears. That sentence, that casual, exhausted, resigned little sentence, cracked something wide open inside me. And that's when I realized. She hadn't slipped. She hadn't made a mistake. She'd planned this. Maybe not the voicemail. Maybe not the bruise. But the rest of it, the lies, the late nights, the planning dinners, all of it was orchestrated to slide beneath my radar. Like she was rehearsing a play I didn't know I was in. I didn't say a word. Just walked to the living room, sat down, and stared at the ring box still sitting on the bookshelf, unopened since the day I brought it home from the jeweler. It looked like a gravestone now. She didn't follow me. And that silence was louder than anything. The thing about betrayal is it doesn't hit all at once. It creeps. Slow. Quiet. Like a bad smell under a locked door. You don't see it, but you know it's there. After the voicemail incident, Darla didn't try to explain. That was the part that gutted me most. No fake tears. No frantic storytelling. She just shifted. She started being overly polite, putting dishes away too neatly, asking if I needed anything from the store in that high-pitched tone she only used around my mom. It was like she was preparing for something, like she knew this wasn't going to be salvageable and was now auditioning for the part of the reasonable one. But I wasn't done. Not by a mile. I couldn't get that voice out of my head. The way he said, last night was, yeah. There was something intimate about it. Not romantic, familiar. Like this wasn't a first-time thing. More like part of a pattern. And then I remembered something. About 2 months earlier, she had gotten a new laptop. Nothing weird about that. Her old one was dying. The battery would barely hold charge. But she refused to let me help set it up, which was odd. I do IT support. Setting up a MacBook is second nature to me. But she was insistent. No, I've got it. It's syncing my iCloud stuff. Boring stuff. She said it too fast. So while she was out that Thursday morning, under the pretense of taking her wedding dress in for a final pin check, I opened the laptop. I didn't break any passwords. I didn't hack into anything. It was open, right there on the kitchen island. Almost like she was begging to get caught. And sitting in the downloads folder was a document labeled JH Cabin List 2023.pdf. I stared at it for 10 seconds before I clicked. It was a guest list for a weekend getaway. A spreadsheet. Cell A1 read, Jones Hollow Lake trip, March 8th to 10th. 10 names listed. Hers was one of them. Mine was not. I scrolled. One name popped out in bold, yellow highlight. Graham. That's not a name you forget. Not a Jake. Not a Mike. Not a Kevin. Graham. Sounds like someone who knows where to buy expensive whiskey and calls it water of life. I cross-referenced the names with Venmo, just to see who paid who. The account connected to Graham T. had a transaction labeled Fire Wine plus Fire Pit plus No Regrets Weekend Fire. Sent to Darla. 3 weeks before she claimed she was helping her mom renovate the upstairs guest room. My ears were ringing. I didn't even know how long I'd been standing there, but when I looked up, I saw something that made my chest cave in. She was standing in the doorway, watching me. She didn't ask what I was doing. She just said, that was before we were engaged. It wasn't. Not by a long shot. March 8th? I proposed on Valentine's Day. That trip happened less than 4 weeks later. She was already wearing the ring. I didn't yell. I couldn't. Something inside me had snapped in a way that didn't allow noise anymore. Like the wires were cut. So I just whispered. Is that who called? She didn't say yes. She didn't say no. She just walked to the fridge, poured herself a glass of almond milk, and said, you know what's funny? I thought you'd figure it out sooner. I think that hurt more than everything else. Not the cheating. Not the lying. Not even the cabin trip. But the fact that she knew I'd find out. And she didn't care. She just thought it would take me longer. I didn't ask anything else. I couldn't. My mouth felt full of glass. Later that night, I looked up the cabin rental on a private browser. It was the kind of place people book when they want to be completely off-grid. No cell service. No neighbors. And absolutely no one asking questions. I don't know what happened that weekend. I don't want to. But now I had a name. And a timeline. And a ring on my dresser that felt radioactive. The wedding was in 9 days. And I had just made a decision. Not to cancel it. Not yet. Something else. I was going to disappear the night before. Let them all show up. Let her explain. I hadn't planned to follow her. Not that night. Not after everything I'd already uncovered. The fake trips, the voicemail, Graham and his wine-soaked lake retreat. By then, I'd started mentally preparing for the disappearance, going over logistics, rerouting bank accounts, figuring out how to vanish without looking like a criminal or a lunatic. That was the goal, disappear with dignity. Let her make excuses to 93 wedding guests and my Aunt Trudy, who already bought a fascinator for the church photos. But then Thursday happened. I was supposed to meet Darla and her mom at a florist downtown to finalize the altar setup. I showed up, waited 40 minutes in a lobby that smelled like mulch and spray perfume, only to get a text that said, "Sorry. Got caught up with a bridesmaid thing. Can you trust me with this one?" I stared at the message so long I could see the words burned into my eyelids. I left without responding. But something tugged at me. Not suspicion, that was already long past. It was more like curiosity. Like I was watching a movie I hated but couldn't look away from. I had her location history still synced to my Google Maps app from a year ago. She probably forgot. Or maybe she thought I was too spineless to check again. It said she was 10 blocks away. Midtown. In an area filled with yoga studios, overpriced dog bakeries, and day spas that didn't take walk-ins. I told myself I just wanted to see. Not confront her. Not cause a scene. Just observe. The signal blinked near an unfamiliar building with frosted windows and no signage. I walked past it once. Then twice. Finally, I crossed the street and ducked into the corner of a laundromat, pretending to fiddle with my phone while glancing at the building's glass doors. 10 minutes passed. Then she walked out, hair slightly undone, a flush on her face that wasn't from the sun. She looked relaxed. Too relaxed. And behind her, not 2 steps behind, was him. Graham. I knew it was him before I even saw his face. There was something in the way he stood, like he was confident he wouldn't be caught. Like he'd been here before. He was taller than I expected. Clean-shaven. Not rugged. Polished. He wore a tailored jacket and had a pair of aviators on even though the sky was gray. Of course he did. They didn't touch. But they didn't need to. She laughed at something he said. The kind of laugh I hadn't heard from her in months. Not that fake nasal chuckle she used around coworkers. A real one. Deep from the ribs. The kind I thought belonged to us. Then she hugged him. Not a polite hug. Not a hey thanks for the consultation kind of hug. This one lingered. She pressed her cheek into his chest like she belonged there. Then, just before she turned to leave, he kissed her head. Not her lips. Her head. And that was worse. Because it wasn't lust. It was familiarity. Routine. A kiss someone gives when they don't have to ask permission. She walked away like it was nothing. I didn't move for a while. I stood in the corner of that laundromat, hands stuffed in my jacket, watching as the man I hadn't even spoken to stepped into a dark green Mercedes and pulled away without even glancing back. I walked home instead of taking the train. My thoughts didn't race. They slowed. Organized. Cooled. That was the moment the plan changed. I was no longer going to disappear the night before the wedding. I was going to attend it. Smile. Speak. Toast. And then, when the clock struck midnight, vanish without a trace, like I was never there. No dramatic scene. No screaming match. Just absence. The kind that sticks. But first, I needed leverage. Because if I was leaving behind the life we built, I wasn't walking out empty-handed. And I knew exactly where she kept the envelopes. The house was still when I came home that evening, which was unusual. Normally Darla would be on the phone with someone, her mom, her cousin from North Carolina, or worse, that overcompensating wedding planner who kept saying things like, "What's your color story?" and "Will the reception feel emotionally seasonal?" Whatever that means. But that day, it was quiet. Too quiet. I could hear the ticking of the clock in the hallway. The hum of the fridge. My own pulse. She was out again. Errands. Last-minute prep. And for once, I was grateful. I wasn't there to confront her. I was there to find what I knew she was hiding, the prenup. Let me be clear, I hadn't asked for one. I didn't care about that stuff. I don't own a business. I'm not sitting on inherited oil money, and I certainly don't have stocks in anything other than depression and self-loathing. But Darla had brought it up one evening like it was a logical step. It protects both of us, she had said. I agreed because I didn't think it mattered. We were in love. At least, I thought we were. But now, things felt different. This wasn't about protection anymore. It was about discovery. She kept important documents in a gray lockbox in her office closet, always locked, but the key was taped inside a fake makeup compact in her vanity drawer. She thought that was clever. I knew because she'd shown me once, drunk off sangria, laughing like a little kid playing spy. It took less than a minute to unlock it. Inside were the usual things: birth certificate copies, tax returns, our old lease, some vet papers for a cat she had in college. And then, at the very bottom, a cream folder marked simply, legal. I opened it, and that's when the air in the room seemed to thicken. There were two documents. One was the prenup for pages, signed and dated. The other was a life insurance policy. On me. I stared at it for so long my eyes started to blur. It wasn't huge, $250,000, taken out jointly, with her as the sole beneficiary. Filed 6 months ago, right after the proposal. I flipped through the fine print. The part that made my stomach seize up wasn't the amount. It was the date of the signature, 2 weeks before she proposed we do a prenup. That means she filed the insurance paperwork first, before ever bringing up mutual legal protection. And the kicker? She forged my signature. I sat on the floor, document in hand, shaking. My mind started racing through every strange little moment I'd dismissed as a quirk. The way she pushed protein shakes on me in the morning. That time she asked if my old inhaler still worked. The way she insisted on booking our honeymoon through a private travel agent instead of online. My hands started to sweat. Then my phone buzzed. It was a text from a number not saved in my contacts. The message was short. You're not the first. No name. No context. No follow-up. Just those 4 words. I froze. My fingers hovered above the screen. I tried calling the number, but it rang once, then went straight to voicemail. I listened to the automated voice, no custom greeting, just a default robotic tone. Then, just as I was about to hang up, a second message came through. Meet me at the Orwood Diner. Tomorrow, 11 a.m. Don't bring her. I stared at the screen like it was a countdown timer on a bomb. Someone new. And they wanted to talk. But who? Another ex? A family member? Someone she'd done this to before? My head was spinning. I shoved the documents back into the envelope, locked the box, returned the key, and sat on the edge of the bed. I could still smell her perfume on the pillow, that soft lilac scent that used to calm me. Now it made me feel like I was drowning in sugar and rot. The next morning came like a slow punch. I barely slept. I arrived at the diner 10 minutes early, ordered black coffee, and chose a booth that faced the door. I scanned every face that walked in. At 11:03, someone slid into the seat across from me. She was maybe in her 40s. Sharp eyes. Leather jacket. Looked like she hadn't smiled in years. She didn't introduce herself. She just pulled out her phone, tapped the screen a few times, and held it out. It was a photo of Darla, kissing another man. Not Graham. Someone else. And from the angle, the distance, the grain of the photo, it wasn't a selfie. It was surveillance. I followed her 3 years ago, the woman said. Her voice was steady. She left someone else for you. Now she's doing it again. But smarter. I couldn't speak. She doesn't just cheat, the woman went on. She rotates. Cycles. Builds trust, builds assets, builds emotional capital. Then she flips it. I watched her destroy my brother. Took his savings. Left him with nothing. We didn't know until it was too late. I tried to breathe, but it felt like the air was solid. I recognized her in the engagement announcement, she added. Same eyes. Same necklace. Different name. I whispered, what was her name? She looked me straight in the eye. Caroline. I didn't touch my coffee. I just sat there, across from the woman who had apparently been watching my fiancée for years, or at least the version of her she knew. She was calm in that way only people who've survived the worst kind of personal betrayal are. No drama in her voice. No anger. Just resignation and facts. The kind of woman who's had too many doors slammed in her face to waste time raising her voice anymore. My brother was engaged to her in 2019, she said. Her name was Caroline Finch back then. She said she worked in freelance fashion copywriting. Always vague. Always out, meeting a client. She was careful, just like she is now. Never too affectionate in public. Never told him where she banked. He was in love. Deep. Wrote her poems. Bad ones. I blinked. What happened? She drained his savings through a fake joint investment account. Convinced him to sign papers he didn't understand. Left him 4 days before the wedding. Just disappeared. The photographer showed up. The florist showed up. She didn't. I felt sick. And your brother? Her jaw tightened. He's in Vermont now. Alone. Doesn't speak to people. Got a cabin near a lake and talks to birds. She slid a small manila envelope across the table. I opened it. Inside was a single printed page, a clipping of a local engagement announcement from 4 years ago. There she was. Darla. Only, not Darla. Caroline. Same smile. Same tilt of the head. Even the same earrings, small gold hoops she said her grandmother gave her. I stared at the image for a long time, feeling something in my chest fracture. She changes names, the woman said. Legally. She's clever about it. Not every year. Not in the same state. She keeps a 4 to 5 year rotation. Builds a new life each time. Always with someone a little better off than the last. You're the 5th that I know of. I looked up. Why are you telling me all this now? Because you're the first one who seems to be putting the pieces together before she disappears. You might actually have time to do something about it. I should have felt grateful. Empowered even. But all I felt was the weight of time. Wasted months. Fabricated conversations. All the little lies she told in the tone of casual trust, like when she said she didn't like camping because of bugs. Now I wondered if it was because she'd spent too many weekends in cabins with other men, leaving behind new lies like footprints in the dirt. The woman leaned in. She's not going to marry you. She's going to disappear, and if she's smart, and believe me, she is, she'll make it look like you ran. I opened my mouth to respond, but my phone buzzed. It was a message from Darla. Thinking of eloping instead. Just us. No more stress. What do you think? I stared at it, heart pounding. The timing wasn't a coincidence. She knew something was shifting. She could feel the narrative slipping. I pocketed my phone, nodded to the woman, and walked out of the diner without another word. That night, I didn't go home. I stayed at a motel off Highway 62, the kind with buzzing lights and mismatched curtains. I sat on the bed for hours with the manila folder open in front of me, scanning every detail, every date, every clue. I cross-referenced old public records. I found a Caroline Finch who had applied for a business license in Ohio in 2017. Then, 2 years later, she became Tessa Grove in Seattle. A yoga instructor with an Instagram account that hadn't posted since 2021. Same eyes. Same smirk. And now Darla Ray. She wasn't just changing names. She was changing lives. And every time, she took more. Money. Time. Identity. Like a parasite that doesn't kill the host, just leaves them hollow. I printed everything I could find. I created a file. Not digital. Paper. Physical. Something real. Something I could leave behind if I vanished. Something that said, I didn't imagine this. I didn't go crazy. This happened. The next morning, I went to a lawyer. I didn't tell him everything. Just enough. He helped me draft a document, an affidavit of sorts, outlining my suspicion that the marriage was being entered into under false pretenses. We attached the photos. The documents. A notarized statement. It wouldn't hold up in court. But it wasn't for court. It was for me. For when I disappeared. So if anyone came looking, they'd find it. The truth. My truth. The last thread of me that hadn't been rewritten by her. And as I walked out of that office, I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. Resolve. I wasn't going to be another bird-watching ghost in Vermont. I was going to make sure she knew. I saw her. I figured her out. And the night before the wedding, she was going to find something on her pillow that would ruin the next 5 years of her life. Not revenge. Just disruption. Like she'd done to all of us. 3 days before the wedding, I stopped sleeping altogether. Not metaphorically, I mean I actually didn't sleep. At all. I would lie in bed next to her, completely still, breathing like I was dreaming, while my mind was sprinting through contingency plans, exit strategies, and the location of every USB drive I'd hidden around the house. The irony? She slept like a child. It was almost impressive. But that morning, I finally saw my opening not through her, but through Trina, her oldest friend, the only bridesmaid Darla actually seemed to respect. Trina had always rubbed me the wrong way, not because she was rude, but because she was loyal in that blind, cultish way. If Darla said the sky was green, Trina would argue with NASA. But loyalty has limits. I invited her for coffee under the pretense of helping coordinate the post-rehearsal dinner playlist, a safe enough excuse to not arouse suspicion. We met at a small cafe 2 neighborhoods over, somewhere Darla would never randomly show up. I arrived early and brought a manila folder. Not the whole file. Just enough. Trina showed up in oversized sunglasses and a pink hoodie that said, "Wife Vibes," which was already nauseating, and sat down with that over-caffeinated energy that made her bounce her leg like a motor was running under the table. I smiled. Polite. Casual. Then I slid the envelope across the table. "What's this?" she asked, mid-sip. "Just read it." She hesitated, then opened the folder and flipped through the first few pages. I'd selected carefully a photo of Caroline Finch and her old engagement announcement, the forged insurance policy, and the notarized affidavit I'd had prepared. Her mouth parted slightly, and for the first time since I'd met her, Trina blinked. Not just her eyes, her whole composure cracked for a second. Like she'd just found out she was the final witness at a trial she didn't know was happening. "What the hell is this?" "That," I said quietly, "is the woman you're about to walk down the aisle for. She's done this before. At least 4 times that I know of. I have names, documents, photos. One of the men she destroyed has been living in a cabin for 3 years, writing letters he never mails." Trina stared at me, then said the only thing I didn't expect. "I know." The world stopped spinning. "What?" "I didn't know everything," she whispered, eyes darting. "But I knew she'd changed names. Once. I thought it was something traumatic, like a fresh start kind of thing. She told me it was because of a stalker. I never pushed." She swallowed hard. "She's been my best friend since we were 19. And yeah, she lies. A lot. But I thought it was the harmless kind. You know? Filters on life. Everyone does it now. But this," she tapped the photos, "this isn't filters. This is predatory." For the first time, I felt something strange toward Trina, pity. She wasn't the puppet I thought. She was just another prop in Darla's production. Loyal, yes, but only because she never knew the whole script. "I need your help," I said. "With what?" "Ending this. Quietly. No fights. No scandals. But loud enough that she never tries this again. Not with me. Not with anyone." Trina was quiet for a long time. Then she nodded. That night, the plan moved forward. She'd plant the documents in Darla's wedding suite, the original printouts, no copies, along with a single note that read, "Do not proceed. You've been seen. For the sake of everyone in that room, disappear now." I wouldn't be there when she read it. That was the point. But I did write a letter of my own. A longer one. For her. No rage. No blame. Just truth. I placed it in a sealed envelope and gave it to the front desk of the hotel where the bridal party was staying, scheduled to be delivered at 6:45 a.m. the morning of the wedding. I signed it with my real name. She'd know I'd been behind it. She'd know I walked away not because she hurt me, but because I'd chosen not to become like her. The day before the wedding, I drove to a small storage unit on the outskirts of town and loaded everything I hadn't donated or trashed. I'd booked a one-way flight under a temporary alias. Nothing illegal, just an old family name I never used. I'd be gone before the guests arrived. No one would know where. That night, I looked out the window of the motel and thought about the version of me from a year ago, the man who cried when she said yes. The man who bought her favorite wine on Fridays and laughed at her terrible humming in the shower. I pitied that man, because he thought love was a shelter. But now I knew, love, in her hands, was a strategy, and I'd become the variable she failed to control. The morning of the wedding was overcast. Not a single ray of sunlight broke through the low-hanging clouds, and the wind smelled faintly of lilacs and lawn chemicals. I sat in a diner 20 miles outside the city, eating a stack of pancakes I couldn't taste and listening to a family behind me argue over which superhero would win in a fight. I almost laughed. At exactly 6:47 a.m., the front desk of the bridal hotel delivered a letter in a sealed envelope. At 7:01, Trina texted me one word. Done. By 7:15, I had disabled my phone. The plan was simple. Vanish. No note to my family. Not yet. No announcements. Just an absence that would force silence to stretch longer and longer until Darla had no excuse left to feed the people in that church. But something unexpected happened. At 9:03 a.m., Trina emailed me. No subject line. Just one sentence. She left. No public meltdown. No finger-pointing. She didn't even pack the dress. She just left. Walked out of the bridal suite. No warning, no shoes, no call to her mother or maid of honor. Left behind the makeup table, the champagne flutes, the itinerary. Left behind me. Or whoever she thought I was. All that remained were the unopened envelopes, the dress in its plastic shell, and a small note she scribbled on hotel stationery. You were never stupid. I was just afraid you wouldn't stay if I showed you who I really was. But you stayed anyway, and I still ruined it. I don't expect forgiveness. I only hope you find what I never could. There was no signature. I didn't know what I felt. Relief? Closure? A slow, sinking quiet settled in my chest, the kind that doesn't sting, just makes room. Room for breathing. For moving forward. The next few days were blurry. Calls came in from friends, family, some angry, most confused. I let them sit unanswered. Eventually, the noise quieted. The question stopped. Life, like it always does, moved on. And so did I. 3 months later, I was living 2 states away, teaching workshops in a small co-working space downtown. Nothing glamorous. But it was mine. I rented a studio apartment above a florist. The first night I moved in, I bought a cheap rug and a coffee maker. No shared drawers. No hidden documents. Just space. And quiet. Every now and then, I'd get the urge to look her up. I never did. I knew she'd already started again, a new name, a new life, maybe even a new fiancé. But it wasn't my story anymore. And she wasn't my problem to solve. One afternoon, while sitting in the park, sipping lukewarm coffee from a dented thermos, I met someone. Her name was Elise. She was feeding pigeons breadcrumbs and reading a paperback mystery upside down. She caught me watching and smiled without shame. "You're staring," she said, "and I'm not sure if you're judging the pigeons or my taste in literature." I laughed for the first time in what felt like years. "I think I'm just surprised someone can read upside down." She shrugged. Trauma response. It was the first time someone had made a joke like that and actually meant it. We talked for an hour that day. And again the next day. And then again. No secrets. No fake names. Just stories. Real ones. I don't know where it's going. I'm not rushing it. But last week, I brushed my teeth and looked in the mirror, really looked, and I realized something simple and profound. I don't flinch anymore. Not when the phone rings. Not when someone is 5 minutes late. Not when I'm alone on a Sunday night. Because I survived a storm without screaming. I walked away without burning it all down. And that, to me, is the definition of peace.